Hello, listeners. International Trade Resources podcast is back with you today. And I'm super excited because I'm on video with an old friend of mine who I haven't seen face to face in a long time. And I'm thrilled to have him here as a guest on our podcast. Dr. Uny Cao is a technologist. He's based in Hangzhou, China right now. He's executive vice president of Zhejiang Intellectual Property Exchange Center. This is a government Zhejiang University founded program where they work in the space of university technology transfer. He calls himself buy local, which I love as a phrase. He splits his time between the US and China. His early years, kindergarten through college were all in Hangzhou, and then he was in the United States for about 15 years. He's had a career focus in IT, has had the position of CTO, and really forged a career in the innovation of technology transfer. So that and intellectual property and was one of the main things we want to talk about today. So thank you for being here, Uny.
Very excited to be here, Kim. It's nice to see you after all these years.
It is, and hopefully in person soon. So
Yeah.
Uny, what we want to talk about today is that, not just strictly technology transfer, but many startups and SMEs don't think about having an international footprint until later stage growth, right? They don't think about utilizing resources across a couple different countries, and you're buy local, as you call it. So can you tell us about some of the key areas where a company might find better options if they have, for example, staff in one country and R&D in another, or what are the opportunities for companies to really leverage a multinational platform when they're in the startup and SME stage?
Yeah, I speak from my own lived experience on this topic. As Kim, as you mentioned, I've been calling myself buy local. So I spent lots of years in China and in the US, then now back in China, all these things to take advantage what local offers is what I witnessed and I took advantage of. And at the end of the day, for a startup, it's about building a product and sell it. Now, in terms of building a product, we need all kinds of resources. And these days, I use a framework that's pretty popular in China. It's called the total factor economic factors. So those are means of production. There are 5 such factors: land, workforce, technology, capital, and recently data. And so in China, if a team consider using China as a place to build such a product, their product, the supply of all these 5 factors is abundance. And for example, land. So they're grant to give you office space to start with. And if you are really big, you get a building at some point, you get a piece of land. In terms of workforce, China encourages talent to move to China. There are grants available for these talents. And in hiring, sometimes a tax credit for hiring high-tech workers. In terms of technology, this is more about the supply chain. In China, after all these years, there are enough technology suppliers. So if you want to build a chip, let's say you're a designer, there are all kinds of people and all kinds of companies downstream and upstream to work with you. In terms of capital, China actually, by some measures, probably is the largest capital investor in the world in technology. And it's catching up on Silicon Valley a lot. It has built some very giant, investing in some giant companies too. And finally, on data, that's a very interesting topic that got my recent attention, because we're in digital economy. There's lots of data. How do you share the data? That's one. 2 is, if you come to China, it's usually the largest use base, largest technology scenario. So you might get a chance to grab the most data to train on your models and work on your products. And the second, then for the start, the second question is, you have the product, how do you sell it? Now that's the market. Now, for an international team, the product might be selling in China, might not. It could be the market could be Southeast Asia, it could be Japan, it could be Korea. So that's a separate topic. But what I say, of course, many times China naturally is the market for that. And then follow up your question on grants, tax credit, this kind of things. China is pretty unique on this now, but probably the Chinese model will be copied by countries like Vietnam, India, all these booming countries. The Chinese model so far is the government does a lot of work. And some people say China probably copied from Japan. I suspect not, because the Chinese government does spend lots of money on startups and small to medium SMEs. So in China, if you're versed in getting grants, getting stuff from government, there are matching grants. There are grants, meaning they're matching grants, as in you spend the money, you get your receipts and you get the reimbursement. And there are outright grants. Then also the government sometimes does equity investment too, with some circumstances. Also, there are subsidies for the housing, for those kind of things. There are favorable tax policies. For example, with the certain conditions, if you meet the certain conditions, some of the taxes will be returned to you by the local level.
That sounds great. I know I think it's interesting to recognize for our listeners that in China, as well as in other countries, as you mentioned, India, Vietnam, other industrializing countries, there's been more support for, let's call it, foreign investment. So people might think you have to be a domestic startup company to be able to access all of these benefits. And in some cases, that's true, but not always. And in the US here, we do have organizations that are very focused on foreign direct investment and giving those investment companies, a lot of refunds on taxes or training for employees, as you mentioned, with labor subsidies, favorable taxes, so these are the kinds of things that we would encourage a company to look at internationally in multiple markets.